And now, the general weather around Alaska.
Welcome, everyone, to Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service in Alaska region on this Thursday, August 7th, 2025. And taking a look at the Alaska weather-related headlines, we've had an area of low pressure across the lower end of the Alaska Peninsula with an occluded front extending north and northeast of it. And along that front, there have been some gale force winds, moderate to even locally heavy rain. But that system will begin to weaken overnight and into Friday as it gets up along the northern Gulf Coast and pushes toward the Panhandle. There's going to be a second system, another low pressure with tropical origins, that's going to potentially bring some more moderate to locally heavy rain to the Panhandle over the weekend, with some of the heaviest rain coming Saturday night. And that's of a concern because we have the Mendenhall Glacier Suicide Basin continues to fill with melt water and rain runoff. And we anticipate within the next several days, sometime between later this weekend and next week, that it will release. Now, the extent of that release depends on many factors, but the Juneau Forecast Office is keeping a very close eye on that, and should anything begin to develop and it looks like a release is imminent, various flood watches, warnings, or advisories may be issued. So stay tuned, those of you in the Juneau area. And then coming up Friday night, we have the full moon. And then those of you sky watchers want to see the two brightest planets in the sky, even though we're going to be in a cloudier pattern. If you're fortunate enough to have clear or partly cloudy skies early Tuesday morning at daybreak, look for Venus and Jupiter to be only 1 degree apart. We call that a conjunction. And then overall, things are going to start to cool down this weekend, especially along the western mainland as a shot of cool air comes down in off of eastern Russia, the Chukchi Sea through the Bering Strait. So we're going to see a cooler and occasionally wet early fall pattern starting to emerge this weekend into next week. And looking at the hints, this is the harbinger. These high clouds are ahead of a front that's going to be coming in from the northwest up there at Point Hope. Temperature 54 degrees, but you're going to see those temperatures dropping, especially for tomorrow and over the weekend. Seward is getting in on the rain that Perryville, Chicknick, and on up toward Kodiak City received. A number of all those locations received over 2 inches of rain from this frontal system, along with some gusty winds. Seward now seeing some rain and fog, 54 degrees. And looking at the current hazardous weather, there are only two advisories and warnings out. There's a red flag warning until 5 p.m. this Thursday evening for breezy, very warm, dry conditions there around Delta Junction, Fort Greely, for enhanced fire danger and fire weather threat there. And then a wind advisory for Donnelly and the upper Richardson River for some gusty winds coming up through there, the Alaska Range, but those will be allowed to expire before early this evening. And then here, this blue area across the Panhandle, especially from Juneau, Sitka southward, is just a special weather statement highlighting the fact that moderate to heavy rain will be impacting this area of the Panhandle over the weekend. And as I said, it looks like the heaviest rainfall is going to come Saturday night into the pre-dawn of Sunday morning. Generally, 1 to 3 inches of rain is expected, but where you have terrain enhancement, where that moist air can be forced up along steeper terrain, there could be locally as much as 4 inches of rainfall in portions of the central and southern Panhandle as a result of that orographic lift, as it is called. So the fire weather outlook on Friday, the cooling trend begins in the interior, especially the west. You'll start to feel it. So temperatures are going to be slipping back down below 70, and the western interior will get some widespread wetting rains developing as there's a low pressure and cold front coming down between there. So a quarter, half inch of rain, Ambler to Galena. And it'll be breezy south winds into south central and the Alaska Range on Friday. The outlook is the weekend, though, will bring a cooling trend and wet weather for the western 2/3 of the mainland and also pushing down into the southern areas. The eastern interior, though, along the Elkhorn border will still stay generally warm and dry into early next week. Places like Eagle, Northway, you'll hold on to the warmth and drier conditions a little longer. Here is the fire danger map based on the spruce adjective, because the spruce is what carries fire in the latter season. And we find that threat here still kind of a little bit of a holdover from what we had going on this Thursday for that red flag warning, kind of around that Delta Junction, Fort Greely area. But again, out here to the west, some wetting rains are going to be developing, so that will rapidly be dampened coming up here. And then on Friday, August 8th, just before midnight, Friday late evening, we have the full Sturgeon moon of August. It's referenced more so to native traditions of the lower 48, especially Great Lakes region, because that's I'm from Michigan originally, and the rivers of Michigan at one time had run of lake trout and sturgeon. We still have a few large sturgeons that come up out of the Great Lakes, especially Lake Michigan, but that's what that moon is named for, because the sturgeon spawn in August and September. And then the conjunction of Venus and Jupiter will occur early Tuesday morning, August 12th. If you're fortunate enough to have clear skies or partly cloudy enough to get a view of the eastern horizon, you'll be able to see Jupiter just to the left of Venus, and they'll be just 1 degree apart, and we call that a conjunction because they appear to be coming together, even though they are separated by quite a bit of distance out there along the inner solar system orbital plane of the planet. So that's a neat sight to see if you're fortunate enough to have clearer skies. Now, looking at the satellite imagery, we can see the front coming in up through the Gulf. Here are the high clouds lifting north, but the front itself is pushing up now at Kenai Peninsula. We have bands of some moderate rain. The rains have begun to taper off, still showery Kodiak Island back toward the Alaska Peninsula, but as this front lifts further north tonight, the winds will not be quite as strong. They'll begin to subside, and the rain won't be quite as heavy as it was along the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula or eastern Kodiak Island. Now, as we go further north, we have stalled out front across just south of the Brooks Range, and we have yet another low is going to be coming out of the North Pacific that has tropical moisture. It's actually remnants of a tropical system. That is the one that's going to come into the Panhandle this weekend, bringing the heaviest rain Saturday night into the pre-dawn of Sunday morning. So that's why here in the central southern Panhandle, you could be looking at another 1 to 3 inches of rainfall during that time, potentially as much as 4 in places where you would have terrain enhancement due to that orographic lift. But here is the front. The first front here tonight butts up along the Gulf Coast and begins to diminish. Winds coming down, rain not quite as heavy. And we have a low pressure taking shape here east of Norton Sound, and the cool air beginning to head southeastward. In the meantime, here comes the hints of that second North Pacific low that's going to be moving up into the Gulf and sending that atmospheric river moisture right toward the Panhandle here for later Saturday into early Sunday. Friday night, lows up here again in kind of the northwest quadrant of the mainland, east of Norton Sound, Kotzebue Sound, and then the cooler air beginning to head southward. Here comes that low up out of the North Pacific, and by the time we get into Saturday, the low is up just east-southeast of Kodiak Island with this front and plume of warmer, moist air that's going to be creating that moderate to heavy rainfall across the Panhandle, especially Saturday night, early Sunday. In the wake of this cold front, as it pushes southeastward, temperatures are going to cool. There could even be some wet snowflakes in across parts of the western Brooks Range along the Arctic coast in the vicinity of Utqiagvik. Don't be surprised if there's a little bit of a mix, nothing heavy. And then on Sunday, cooler air does manage to push pretty far south and eastward, though it won't be as pronounced as it is on the west side of the state. And there's another system that comes in pretty quickly behind that into the western part of the Bering Sea along the Kamchatka Peninsula. So it's not going to really allow the cold air to have any real perseverance, and it'll actually tend to modify it a bit as it comes southeastward. But Sunday we have the low that came up out of the North Pacific into the Gulf and the front weakening. And so there'll be Sunday afternoon and even into Monday some lingering showers across the Panhandle, northeastern Gulf Coast as a result of that feature washing out. So for Friday morning, lows generally in the 50s across the Panhandle with cloud cover, lows low mid-50s, south central, maybe upper 40s, places like Glenelg and Gulkana. And then notice still holding on to these 50s, mid-50s, the lower middle Yukon Valley. Get north of the Brooks Range, temperatures will be getting down near and just above freezing. And then on Friday, notice maybe a 70 there at Northway, but finally temperatures cooling into the 60s, and they'll continue downward when you see Saturday's temperatures. Still 60s Anchorage Bowl on up through the lower Matsu Valley. May squeak out 70 at Northway, and the Panhandle generally seeing some rain showers and a little cooler temperatures. For Saturday morning lows, notice now some 40s coming down across the lower Yukon. Still maybe a few lower 50s, middle Yukon, upper Kuskokwim. And temperatures along the north slope, Arctic coast, generally in the 30s, low mid 30s, just above freezing, and temperatures low to mid 50s across the panhandle. And then on Saturday, with this front working its way eastward, if you can get a little bit of sunshine, still maybe a 70, 72 degree reading, Yukon Flats, Fairbanks east to along the LCAM border there at Eagle and Northway. But cooler airs come on down along the west side of the state, so highs may not get much above 50, Emonic, Macoriac, as cooler air comes southeastward. And here is the temperature outlook for August 13th through the 17th, centered on mid-month. And overall, we're going to see a cooling trend. So places in through here that enjoyed some very warm temperatures, even in the 70s and 80s the last 2-3 weeks. We're going to see cooler, early hint of fall. Nothing too dramatic, but definitely an emergence of an early fall pattern. And it's going to occasionally be wet. We should see near normal temperatures, south central, southeast mainland, and along the Gulf Coast. Panhandle maybe just a little cooler because of some cloud cover and precipitation. But one thing for certain, occasionally wet pattern, kind of equally distributed across most of the mainland. Into the Panhandle, maybe slightly less so for the southwest as you go down through Bethel, Dillingham, and Kodiak. But nevertheless, as I said, we're going to see an early fall pattern begin to emerge with a little cooler temperatures, a little cloudier weather, and occasionally wet pattern here or there as we go into mid-month.